Hi guys, so Kyle Kalinske is a YouTuber, a progressive left-wing YouTuber, and he has a huge following on YouTube, and he's a big supporter of Bernie Sanders. Now what's happened this week is Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the race and he has thrown his support behind Joe Biden. He has endorsed Joe Biden, and this has pissed off Kyle a huge amount. Okay, so this video, I'm going to start it a little bit after the beginning of the video because the first part is just watching Bernie Sanders giving his speech to endorse Joe Biden. But where it gets more interesting is how Kyle responds to this. And in this video, I'm going to respond to Kyle also because I think there's something that Kyle doesn't understand. And I don't like to be condescending here, but I'll get into the point as we watch the video. So let's start.
Wrong, guys. I think that Bernie thinks he's doing the absolute best thing for his movement and the people at this point in time. In fact, I have no doubt about that. Bernie has proven to me over the years that you'll get no cynical interpretation of his actions from me. I mean, I think he's proven himself over and over to be effectively a working class hero and champion, and that he really cares about these issues, and he's doing what he views is the best thing to bring about a better future and a better reality. I think that's all the case. However, I think Bernie is incredibly naive and very weak, and it brings me no joy to say that.
Now, this is something that I had been saying about Bernie Sanders back in 2016. I saw a video of Bernie Sanders when he was giving a speech, and members of Black Lives Matter came up and took the microphone from him, basically kicked him off the podium, and started insulting the members of his audience. And Bernie stood on the sideline and allowed them to speak. And in that moment I said to myself, Bernie Sanders is not going to become president because of this. Because if he went up against Donald Trump, even back in 2016 or even now, Donald Trump would destroy him. He would call him weak. They would run videos of Bernie bending over for people. And also in this primary, he turned around and he said the stupidest thing possible. He was asked, can Joe Biden win against Donald Trump? And he said yes. Before the end of the primary, before he endorsed, he dropped out. This was weeks ago, when he was still campaigning. How can you turn around and say, yes, my opponent can defeat Donald Trump, when your entire argument is that you are the person who can defeat Donald Trump? That's every candidate's position. It's not the other people can defeat Donald Trump. It's I am the one who can do it. Why would anyone vote for you if someone else can do the same job as you can? But let's continue.
I think that what he did here, to steal a term from the kids, this is, he's a cuck. So let me explain what I mean. Because Joe went on, by the way, to read off the teleprompter the entire time. He like stutters at the beginning because he's like, okay, like I don't put the thing on in front of me so I could do it. And then right where I cut that video off there, Joe goes on to respond, and he's reading from the teleprompter the entire time, and, you know, talking about Bernie and how important he is, and then starts talking about some issues and all that stuff. But it's all on the teleprompter. Now, if you wanted to find a way to make lefties like myself feel like, oh, this is all just a show, couldn't have found a better way than that. Couldn't have found a better way. You couldn't actually have a conversation. You needed the teleprompter, and so that just means you're on script, which means you don't really necessarily believe everything you're saying, or your mind is so gone that you can't, you know, focus and engage in a conversation. But either way, that's not good. Now they go on to discuss some issues. So Bernie, would you like to ask me a question? And Bernie's like, well, sure, Joe. I'm a big supporter of a $15 minimum wage. Are you? And Joe's like, oh yes, oh absolutely. So, and this is why, now I've given you guys my purity test, and it's, my top 5 issues, and I say you have to be in favor of one or two of them, but it can't just be a placating thing. I have to feel like you're going to fight for it. I have to believe you. And in the case of Joe Biden, I hate to tell you guys, I don't believe him. So Bernie gets, Joe to say, yeah, $15 minimum wage, sure. Did you guys know that Barack Obama and Joe Biden were in office for 2 terms, and at one point they had a supermajority, and they never got a minimum wage increase? Did you know the last time we had a minimum wage increase was under George W. Bush? Did you know that? So I don't believe you, Joe. I don't think you're going to get me a $15 minimum wage. If I thought you did and I thought you were going to fight for it, I'd vote for you because that passes my test. Now, maybe I have to think about that a little further because he's actually a war criminal, and I have a very big problem voting for a war criminal. So, I don't know. That'd be a tough one that I have to consider for a while because there are mitigating factors like being a war criminal that I genuinely believe that Joe Biden should be behind bars today.
Okay, so there's a number of things I want to say about this. First of all, you have a purity test, and I accept that. You said there are certain things that I want Joe Biden to do in order to get my vote. But Kyle and progressives don't seem to understand that the DNC don't care about you. They actually don't give a crap about you. They care about pretending that they care about you, but in reality they don't. Otherwise, they would be presenting policies to win your vote. But they don't. So they don't care about you. So there's this problem that progressives and people on the left have in the United States, that they want politicians to do things for them. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Politicians sit in back rooms, they sit in committees, and they say, okay, how can we win this election? What slogans do we need that will get people to vote for us? How can we present ourselves as the lesser of the two evils, but at the same time maintain the system? The problem is the system. The problem is not the politicians. This is the problem I'm talking about. In the United States, you have a choice of 2 parties. You have the Democrats or you have the Republicans. And there's no one else. And many people will criticize others for voting for the Green Party or voting for an independent or whatever. And it's a sad state of affairs if you're criticizing someone for voting according to their conscience. Someone saying, look, I don't agree with Donald Trump and I don't agree with Joe Biden. I should be allowed to vote, no? But if you do and go out and vote for a Green Party or another independent or libertarian party, you would be criticized for that. You'd be criticized for demonstrating your democratic right. But the problem is the system is so corrupt, is so embedded and protective of itself that that voting is a formality. You will get who the system prefers. In 2016, the system preferred Donald Trump. In 2020, I think it's probably going to be the same. I'm not describing the system as some sort of body or some sort of entity. It's all the little wheels working in that system. And what I mean by these little wheels are the lobbyists, are the donors, are the people who want to maintain the status quo. Donald Trump didn't change the status quo. Donald Trump, the only change that he really made was that he was mean on Twitter. And he did some uncomfortable things. But he didn't change the system. He didn't throw out, as he called the swamp monsters. He didn't drain the swamp. He didn't throw people out who he regarded as corrupt or the establishment or whatever. Everything remained the same. And unfortunately, Kyle wants the system to consider him important. But the system doesn't consider you important. You have two choices, Kyle. You either vote for the status quo, and in this case, vote for Joe Biden, because he's the lesser of the two evils, which won't change the system, but it will improve the lives of some people at the expense of others. That's how the system always works. It doesn't fundamentally change anything. You have to destroy the system. You have to burn it down if you want real change. People don't seem to understand this. They seem to convince themselves that they can change it. Bernie Sanders can't change the system. If Bernie Sanders had become president, the system wouldn't change. He wouldn't, because the only way you change the system is to destroy the system. Destroy it and then rebuild a new system. Bernie Sanders wasn't going to do that. Bernie Sanders wouldn't have the power to do that. And when I'm talking about destroying the system, you would need a revolution. And you can't have a revolution, unfortunately, without violence. You need to destroy the system and replace it with something else. And the only way to have the destruction of the system, and I'm saying it once again, is through a revolution. You can't have coffee without caffeine. You can't have chocolate without sugar. You can't have revolution without violence. Otherwise, it's not a revolution. It's tinkering around the edges. And I think progressives, unfortunately, have believed for a long time that they could have a revolution without the violence. They could destroy the system without destroying the system. They could completely change the status quo without actually changing the status quo, without harming the system, harming people. But it doesn't work that way, Kyle. If you really, really want to change the system, you have to completely destroy it. And we've seen over millennia that's how it works.
But I digress from that. So what could Bernie have done that I think would have made sense, would have been reasonable, and something where I would have supported him, and something where they could have gotten me to vote for Joe Biden? I definitely think it's possible they could have done it. Let's say Bernie Sanders has a meeting with Joe Biden, as I'm sure they did, in the weeks leading up to this moment here. And he says, Joe, listen, man, I love you, but we saw what happened in 2016, and basically me and my movement, we were placated. And we didn't actually get the extractions and the concessions that we thought were fair. We feel like we got screwed, to put it plain and simple. So, Joe, here's what I'm proposing to you. I put together a list of these 10 executive orders. These 10 executive orders are not things that you've, openly said, like, I'm against this, like Medicare for all. These 10 executive orders are areas where you do have the wiggle room. And you do, if you really open your mind and open your eyes, you might actually be in favor of these things.
Okay, but Kyle, you don't understand that they don't care about you. They don't need you. They would prefer to lose with Joe Biden than to win with someone who would wreck the system. I don't believe that, and I've said it before, I don't believe that Bernie Sanders would have been capable of destroying the system. Because as I've said before, the only way you destroy the system is through a revolution. But let's say, for example, Bernie Sanders would be able to modify the system somewhat. But they don't want you to do that. They don't care. They would prefer to lose than to win with someone who's going to change the system. Why am I saying that? It's because the people who work in the system have a very comfortable and cushy job. They earn a lot of money. The system for them is their way of life. And you're talking about taking that away from them. Why would they support that? They don't care about minimum wage. They don't care about Medicare for all. They care about having their position. I'm trying to give an analogy here. It's like, imagine you arrive in New York in 1900 and all of the transportation is horse-drawn carriages. and you say, I want you to support me in eliminating this because we're going to have cars instead. We're going to have automobiles. How would they respond? You can explain to them the automobile will be able to transfer people much safer, much faster. There won't be any horse crap on the streets. It'll be cleaner. You'll be able to transfer more people. You can transfer much more things. It will be a revolution. It'd be much better for everyone. And how do you think those people would react to that? They say, we don't want to change the system. We are comfortable as we are. This is exactly the same situation with the DNC and the Democrats. They would prefer to lose with Joe Biden than to win with somebody who would change the system or who has promised to change the system. I fully believe Bernie Sanders would attempt to change the system. He would fail, but he would attempt. And they don't want to take that risk. They're happy the way they are, and they would prefer the system as it is. I don't understand why you don't understand that.
Okay? Things like legalizing marijuana. Because, he famously wrote the crime bill and he was a big drug warrior, but recently Joe's tried to soften his rhetoric on that. Like, no, I'm not like that anymore. So Bernie could have put together a list of 10 bomb executive orders. Just great, whether legalizing marijuana in that you take it off the scheduled substances list. Right?
Okay, I'm sorry to be like a broken record here, but you're attempting to convince them to change something, to change a system that benefits them. Like because marijuana and things like that, they don't care about. They care about their position. And Bernie Sanders represents a threat to their system. Not a huge threat, but any threat. So they don't care about winning you over. They're satisfied that maybe they don't win you over. You won't vote for them. They don't care about that. But they know that a sizable amount of people will vote Democrat anyway. Many people may be concerned about a minimum wage, may be concerned about healthcare. But when they go to vote, they don't think about that. They think about, well, there's Donald Trump or there's the guy with the letter D after his name. And I've always voted for the guy with the letter D after his name. And that's the way they'll vote. You have said it yourself, Kyle, that people don't care about policy. They care about image. They care about spectacular. The spectacular. They care about who has the nicest, who has the shiniest hair, or the best suit. That's what a lot of the public only care about. Many people do not think about politics. This is the problem. Many people, like myself included, that we're so embedded in the political bubble, we're junkies for this, that we think that the public also think in that way. They don't. They don't care about that. Or they care less about it than we do. But certainly they don't vote on that. Or very, very few of them actually do. But not enough that would actually change the system. And it's an inconvenient truth. It's a hard truth. It's something we don't like to listen, we don't like to hear. And, the same reason I was pulling my hair out when I saw the results coming in December for the election in the UK. People voting against their own interests. Voting for Boris Johnson. How is it possible? I looked at everything Boris Johnson... I had made hundreds of videos about how Boris Johnson was telling lies, and people turned around and voted for him. Because people didn't care about the lies. People cared about the image. And it's the same in the US. Many people will vote for Donald Trump because he has the letter R after his name. Many people will vote for Joe Biden because he has the letter D after his name. Many people will vote for Joe Biden because of Obama. Many people will vote for him because they heard of his name. Many people will vote for him because he looks articulate or he looks wise. Not that he is or anything, but it's image, it's perception. It's not about substance. And I think, unfortunately, Kyle believes that he can convince the politicians to give him something in order to vote for them. But it doesn't work that way. Or it doesn't at least work that way if you represent a threat to their system.
Right now it's a Schedule 1, at least lower the schedule rating. He could have put together, hey, pardon not all the nonviolent drug offenders or as many as you can. This is all stuff that Joe Biden could do. End the Iraq war within 100 days.
But once again, they don't do because they don't care. They don't have to do it. It's not necessary for them to do it.
Biden said a couple times in the release, oh, yeah, we're going to have to get out of the Middle East. Now, there's always caveats and hedges, and I think he doesn't really want to do it. But
of course he doesn't want to do it because it's a money earner, because the people who donate to his campaign make a lot of money out of it. This is something, you know this. I don't understand why you don't understand it now. Joe Biden will say to the public, we need to get out of the Middle East. Yes, it's a waste of money and everything. But he'll then turn around and he'll do a dinner and he'll receive money from weapons contractors or lobbyists for Washington. Because you have, and Hillary Clinton at least was honest about it when she said you have a private position and you have a public position. The public position is I'm against the war. The private position is give me money and I'll take it from whoever. And that's the system. But the only way you remove that system, the only way you change that system is to destroy it. And you don't change it by having a president inside. Unfortunately, I don't see it working, but you can't destroy it from within. It has to be completely destroyed from without.
Bernie Sanders could have given Joe Biden a list of 10 really awesome executive orders. Another one I think of is the Buy American executive order, which says, basically, if the federal government needs to purchase goods, it can only buy goods that are produced in America. Right now, we say that it's on paper that, we only buy made in America, but that includes all of our allies too. So we can get from Israel, we can get from China, and then say, this is made in America. You could sign an executive order that says, no, made in America means made in America. So that would immediately help American industry. You could instantly penalize all outsourcers. It's another thing you could do, just like this, if you're president.
I know, but Kyle, you don't understand that they don't care. They'll say it, but they won't do it because the system prefers it like that. The system prefers that they don't change it. There's no incentive for Joe Biden to say, okay, I'm going to make a law that all cars used by the federal government are made in America only. What is the incentive for him to do that? There's zero incentive for him to do that. Because there is an incentive not to do it. That's the problem with the system.
President, sign your name, that's it, you're done. You can take care of it. The president can do a lot of things through executive orders. A lot of things. Bernie Sanders could have made a list of 10 amazing executive orders and said, Joe, listen, here's the list. If you do these 10 within the first 100 days, I will do everything I can to get you elected, and I will do everything I can to make it so my people help get you elected.
I'm sorry to be laughing, but it's out of desperation here. Bernie could make a list of 100 things, but they don't care because it's not necessary, because they don't need Bernie Sanders. They don't want Bernie Sanders. Why would they want Bernie Sanders or his supporters? They're a problem for them. You seem to think that the Democratic Party, the DNC, is interested in winning because they want to help people. You have to stop before you get that into your mind. You have to take a step back. what do the DNC want from politics? They want to make money. They want to maintain a system. Many political parties are like this. There are many people in political parties who are not interested in winning elections, becoming part of the government. Because inside their party, they have a certain amount of power, and they have a very cushy number. They're earning a lot of money through that. They can be lobbyists, they can be strategists or whatever. They can be connected with trade unions, they can be connected with businesses, they can be sitting in on boards. And why, for them, the system is perfect. Or it could even be better, they could have more money. And then someone like yourself comes along, who I agree with. I think these would be good things for the American people. But the system doesn't care about that.
If you tell me you don't want to do these, good luck in November. Now, there's no way Bernie would do this because he was already telling people in the middle of the race, if I lose, I'll support the Democratic nominee.
So the problem with that, this was something that Bernie had to do. He had to turn around and say, I'll support the Democratic nominee. This was actually requested of everyone. And you have to understand it also from Bernie's position. If Bernie had said, no, I'm not going to, well, how would that look? I think it would be extremely damaging to at the time, his chances of actually winning. Because he said, well, you would like them to support you, but you're not going to support them. The party is allowing you to lead it, but you don't want to support the party. This is attempting to modify the party from outside. And I'm not talking about the system, I'm talking about the party. You can't modify the party from outside. You can only modify the party, change the party, reform it from within. But if you want to change the system I'm talking about, you need to destroy the system. You can't change the system from within, because you are fighting against you are part of the wheels then, and the wheel on its own can't change the system. You have to destroy the system. That's the political system in the US. If you want a real revolution, if you want real change, you have to destroy it all. Now, many people will criticize me for saying, well, it's easy for you to say that. You're not someone who is on a minimum wage, for example, or someone who is worried about their health care, because in Europe we don't have that issue. I understand that, but I'm speaking objectively here. If you want to change the system, you have to destroy it. Political systems don't change by themselves. You need a form of revolution. And generally, you can't have a revolution without violence.
Now do you see the problem with that? And now Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing the same thing. In every interview she's giving, she's like, okay, so I'm definitely going to support the Democratic nominee. I'm definitely going to support Joe Biden. But man, do I need concessions. Concessions for what? You have to withhold something. You need to have something of value to them for them to give you anything. What's of value?
But she doesn't have any concessions. Even if she had said to them, well, you need to give me something in order to get my support, they tell her to go away. They say, you can go jump. We don't care about you. We don't need you. Once again, Kyle, you think you have something on them that they need from you. You think you have them by the proverbials. But you don't. They don't need you. As I said before, they would prefer to lose than to win with someone who would change the system or attempt to change the system. I keep saying change, but he wouldn't. He would attempt to change. He might do a few changes around the edges, but he wouldn't change the system. The system is not going away. People have attempted to change the system by getting into power, but they don't. They make a few modifications at the edges, and then they're gone. They're kicked out of office, and someone else is back in their place. Look at the United States over the last number of decades. You had a Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. That's how it always works. And there are some changes on social issues, yes, but there's no radical change to politics. And I feel sorry for the American public, because they're being convinced by politicians and their media that the system is fine. The system is as it is. There's nothing to change, and you can't actually change it. Your way of changing it is by voting for the lesser of the two evils.
Value is your support. If you pledge your support up front, they're not going to give you Dickie McGee's axe. How do I need to explain this to people? Like, this should be obvious. You can't say, I'm definitely going to vote for you, and by the way, here's my list of stuff I want you to do. No, you have to be like, I'm going to withhold my support. I'm not going to vote for you if you don't do the things I want. Now, you say to me, well, Kyle, Joe could just walk away from that. Except he can't, because Bernie represents a 30% chunk of the Democratic voting base. He's got all the young people. Joe got...
And I agree. Bernie has a huge amount of support. But first of all, even if we say 30%, even if Bernie had said to that 30%, don't vote for Joe Biden, when November arrives, the choice will be Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And many people may stay at home, but many people will say, look, I don't like Joe Biden, but I definitely don't like Donald Trump. And they will vote for that. They will vote for Joe Biden. But I have to go back to the core argument here. The core argument is they would prefer to fail than to win with someone who would attempt to change the system. Until Kyle understands this, everything he says is irrelevant, unfortunately. Because once they... And what I mean by that is that they would, I'm repeating myself again, I know this, and this video is going on much longer than I expected. But you have to understand this. They would prefer to fail because they would still be in a job. They would still be in their cushy number. They would still be earning a lot of money through donations, through brown envelopes packed with cash, through their jobs in think tanks, in sitting as lobbyists, sitting in Congress, but also being a member of a board, or that's the system. They would be happy to lose, because you might lose a little bit because I don't have the prestige of being a secretary of state, or I don't have the prestige of being a member of the cabinet, or being an assistant to a senior politician. But I still have my other job. I still have my day job that I will always have. So these people have... Compare that to someone like if Bernie Sanders was really successful and he eliminated all of that. How would those people feel? Would they be convinced to go out and vote for Bernie Sanders? There's a strong possibility that if Bernie Sanders had won the nomination, that the DNC or the people, of the system would rally around a third party, not because they believe, well, Bernie Sanders wouldn't be able to win, so this other person would. It would be to eliminate the chance of Bernie Sanders. Even if Bernie Sanders, at the end of the day, did very little change, they don't want to take that risk.
got waxed, son, in like the under 45 demographic. It's like all of Generation X and all of the millennial generation that, voted for Bernie. So, I mean, he's not that dumb where he thinks he could really put his middle finger up to all Gen Xers and all millennials. So I think he really would have had to do it. Worst case...
And you still don't get it. They don't care. What's the worst? Just to explain this in more simple terms. Joe Biden goes up against Donald Trump and Joe Biden loses. What happens to Joe Biden after that? Is Joe Biden living under a bridge? Is Joe Biden moving out of his villa and living in an apartment? Is Joe Biden begging on the street? What do you think is the worst thing that will happen to Joe Biden after if he loses? I think he's probably going to lose to Donald Trump. It's still early days, but it's looking more likely. What's the worst thing that will happen to Joe Biden? He'll probably get a job as a lobbyist. He'll probably be hired to do some speaking tour. He'll write a book. So for Joe Biden and his team and the people around him, there'll be a few tears on the night of the loss. And then they'll just go back to what they were doing before that. It'll be forgotten about within a few days. And the system will return to normality and it will prepare again for 2024. That's how it works. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
The scenario, guys, is I could see Joe Biden and his team taking a look at the 10 executive orders, crossing out the 5 that they think go too far, and saying, okay, here are the 5 ones that we will do. You have my word, Bernie. I'll do them in the first 100 days if I get elected. And we're all set. And then Bernie can come out to people who are so cynical and beaten down like myself and go, bro, okay, Kyle, you say you don't want to vote for him. You do realize what you're leaving on the table, right? He just said he would take marijuana off of Schedule 1 and he would legalize it federally with an...
Okay, and this, unfortunately, this just continues as it is, that Kyle believes that if Joe Biden wants to win over his vote, that he needs to do what Kyle wants or that what progressives want. And just go back to the same point again, that they don't care. They would prefer to lose than to change the system, than to give you what you want, because they know that a certain percentage of you, progressives, will come out and vote for Joe Biden anyway. So there's nothing that there's no cost really for them in not giving you what you want. And then, of course, the second and most important point is that they would prefer to lose. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. Sorry I ranted on a lot there, but I think it's important for people to understand that the system is not going to change. The only way you change the system is by burning it down through a revolution. And any other attempt is a fallacy, is foolhardy. We've seen it in 2008 where Barack Obama said, hope and change, hope and change. This is the moment. This is our moment. We're going to revolutionize the United States. We're going to change everything. And in 2009, he had a supermajority. So he didn't just have a majority, he had a supermajority. He could do pretty much what he wanted because he controlled Congress and the Senate. So there was almost nothing he couldn't do. And he sat on his hands because he knew that it wasn't his place to change the system. And he knew that if he attempted, the forces of the state, not the state, of the system, I should say, would be against him. And he would lose in 2020 because they would say, okay, you want to change the system. No, you're not going to do that. And he didn't. And he won it in 2012. Sorry. Let me know in the comments, guys. Once again, your comments are always much appreciated. Thanks.